business is a roll call. So David Ramirez is absent. Daniel Bowling. Here. Dick Gervasini is absent. Jan Horvath. Here. And I am here, Kathy Hill. All right. Second order of business is the approval of the minutes from March 18th, 2024. Anybody have any questions or corrections, additions about the minutes from last time?
I'm going to have to abstain from that because I wasn't here.
Well, you can't abstain because if you do, then we won't have a vote.
You can still vote. The city attorney has said that you can still vote even if you weren't at the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So I have a motion to...
I make a motion to accept the minutes as published.
Okay. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have no old business. Our first new business is to hold a public hearing for case number 2024-11 BZA 108 Woodmore Court, wherein the petitioner is seeking a variance from section 8.09 of the adopted development regulations to allow 2 neighborhood identification signs in the mobile/manufactured home park district. Staff report.
Okay, thank you. As you said, this is a request for a variance to allow 2 freestanding neighborhood signs in the mobile home park district. The applicant is requesting the variance to allow 2 signs at 108 Woodmore Court. This was formerly named the Woodmore Court Mobile Home Community. It's been sold and renamed to Forest Hills. The new owners of the property do wish to install 2 freestanding neighborhood signs at the 2 entrances to the community. The development regulations are written so that all residential districts have one set of sign guidelines, but for some reason the mobile home park district was separated out from that. And I think the way it was written was probably just an oversight when we've kind of updated these, since this is the only property that's zoned mobile home park community in the city. We just haven't had to address sign issues at all prior to this, prior to it being sold and the new owners wanting to install signs. So that is something that we will be addressing when we update the development regulations. But for now, since the way the regulations are written do not allow freestanding signs for the MP district, they needed to come for the variance request. The 2 signs that are proposed do comply with the neighborhood identification signs that are written for the rest of the residential districts. Again, it's just the specific zoning, but they comply with the other regulations that we have for other residential districts. So just to show what they look like, these are what the 2 signs would look like as proposed. And then again, they would be at the 2 entrances to the community, which are roughly Brookside Street and Pin Oak at the north end, and Gatewood Street and Pin Oak at the south end. So after we sent notice to properties within 200 feet, we did not receive any questions or comments regarding this request. I can answer any questions that you might have, and I believe the applicant is here as well.
Well, that was my big question. It's like, okay, why is there a different set of standards for the mobile home park as opposed to the rest of the residential districts?
Yep, and I honestly am not sure. It was just set up like that when the sign regulations were first put in place. And again, since we haven't had to address it, since this is the only mobile home community, we just, I guess, haven't taken note of it, but we do intend to address that with our next update to the regulations.
And this is the only one in the city?
This is the only one in city limits.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff?
That was my question. You asked those.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing.
No other questions.
Okay, I'll open the public hearing then. Would anyone like to speak in favor or in opposition to the variance? No one?
Okay.
I'm with the sign
If
company.
Oh, you are?
If you
Okay.
have anything to say, if you wanted to go to the podium, you don't have to speak.
Yeah,
but
it's up to you.
If you had any questions, my name's Lee Mendenhall with the Kansas City Sign Company, and, I'm here to answer any questions that you may have or may not have.
Okay.
It's a fairly standard sign that I think will look nice and be attractive in the property, and I hope that you guys will vote to approve it, so.
Is it lit at all? externally?
It's not externally lit, no.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions for him?
I realize it's not externally lit, are there any street lights or anything like that in the area that would allow it to be seen in the evening?
I'm not sure on that.
There are streetlights, existing streetlights on the street, yes.
Right, okay, that's,
Okay,
wanted to make sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
thank you.
Anyone else to speak in favor or opposition to the case? All right, close the public hearing. Commissioners, have any comments? I'd like to, any discussion?
I think this is a pretty straightforward case. I don't have anything to add.
I agree, ma'am.
Okay, all right. So, according, a request for a variance may be granted upon a finding of the board that all of the following conditions have been met. The board shall make a determination on each condition, and the finding shall be entered into the record. First, that the variance requested arises from such conditions which is unique to the property in question and is not ordinarily found in the same zone or district and is not created by an action or actions of the property owner or the applicant. We'll start with you, Commissioner.
Yes.
Burbank. Agree?
Yes, I agree.
Agree. Okay. So I just would like to make a comment. There are no other districts, so it's obviously not found in other districts or similar ones because there are none. That the granting of the permit for the variance will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners or residents.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
That the strict application of the provisions of the development regulations from which the variance is requested will constitute unnecessary hardship upon the property owner represented in the application.
Agree.
Agree.
I agree.
That the variance desired will not adversely affect the public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or general welfare.
I agree.
I agree.
Agree.
And lastly, that the granting of the variance desired will not be opposed to the general spirit and intent of the development regulations.
Agree.
I agree.
I agree.
In granting a variance, the board may impose such conditions, safeguards, and restrictions upon the premises benefited by the variance as may be necessary to reduce or minimize any potentially injurious effect of such variance upon other property in the neighborhood and to carry out the general purpose and intent of these development regulations. Is there anything you guys would like to add in terms of conditions?
No.
Nothing.
Nothing for me either. All right, in that case, we grant the variance request. Your signs are approved. You're welcome. All right. Our second order of business is to hold a public hearing for case number 2024-15, located at 3900 New Lawrence Road, wherein the petitioner is seeking a variance from section 4.03 of the adopted development regulations to allow an accessory structure to be erected forward of the main building line.
Okay, thank you. As you said, this is a request for a variance to construct an accessory building forward of the main building line. The property located at 3900 New Lawrence Road is zoned R125, which is low-density, single-family residential. The lot is approximately 11.5 acres in size. There is an existing single-family home on the lot. There are no other existing accessory structures at this time. The applicant is proposing to construct a 1,600 square foot detached garage adjacent to the existing paved driveway. You can see where the house is up here, and just adjacent to it, kind of in front and to the right of the house, is where they would be looking to build the garage. The property is irregularly shaped. It's a little bit hard to see the outline, but it's not kind of a standard rectangle, so a little bit hard to gauge front and side yards on this. And there is a pretty dense tree and brush cover between the house and the road. And I pulled up Google Maps just so you can kind of see, if you haven't driven down New Lawrence in a while, but driving down New Lawrence, this is the direction you would look towards the house, and you can't even see the existing house as it is. So
Okay.
The proposed garage would not be visible from the road where they are looking to place it. So section 4.03 of the development regulations states that no accessory buildings shall be erected in any required front or side yard or any other place forward of the main building line. the way they have, it laid out. Here you can see where they kind of drew roughly where it would be. It would be technically forward of the main building line, since it's coming in front of that front wall of the house. So again, after we made the required notice to properties within 200 feet, we did not get any comments or questions from the notified property owners. And I can answer any questions that you might have, and I believe the applicant is here as well.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, well, I know it looks like it's flat and goes out, but in fact, the ground topography actually drops off quite a bit, doesn't it? Behind that, I mean, such that there's a lot of trees and it's not open like that, just as we couldn't see it from the road. I don't think the neighbors, although looks like the only neighbor is to the southwest, but I don't think they would be able to see it either.
Likely not. It's all pretty heavily wooded in there. Let me turn on the...
And I just was asking for concurrence on that. Is that an accurate statement?
I believe that would be accurate. Yeah, you can see with the contours, it drops off quite a bit. This, where the house is kind of a high point, and then everything drops off sort of in every direction from that.
Yeah.
And again, there are, turn the aerial back on. It's all pretty heavily, treed all around that.
Right.
So, I'm sorry, are you done?
No, ma'am, excuse me.
Okay, are you done? You're done? Okay. The area to the east of the house, where kind of where he wants to put the shed, is that a side yard? Is that a front yard? Is that a backyard?
So it would technically be a front yard. The way the definition is written of a front yard, it's basically your area between the house and the road right of way. And so again, even though this is kind of an irregularly shaped lot and the house is not facing towards New Lawrence, this area here would be the front yard.
If that shed were then moved back behind the front of the house, then what side of the house is it on?
It would really need to be sort of behind the house in this. It's really it's kind of tricky to pick the yards in this instance. But we kind of looked at that as well, and really it would need to be sort of in this area behind the house in order for it to be out of
Technically in the
front
rear
yard.
Right.
Yeah, on these lots where they're not kind of a standard rectangle, it gets a little bit difficult to pick out the yards, and especially when the house is not oriented facing the road, makes it, compounds it a little bit more. But I sort of see where you're going. Anywhere they would build it adjacent to that existing driveway would be in the front yard.
Okay.
And they would need to, really get behind the house and expand that driveway in order to get it out of the defined front yard.
Can you show the topography again, the topographical
Yep.
lines, please?
Turn off that.
So it almost looks like a small bench or just, I don't know, I can't even tell for sure.
Yeah.
But it looks like it drops off. If they were to move that out to the west,
Yeah.
or pardon me, to the east, or back further, then it drops off again.
Yeah. So I definitely
Yeah.
see why they picked the spot.
Yeah.
It makes sense why they would want it there.
Yes.
Talk about the square footage as opposed, I know there's a limit to the square footage as opposed to the relation to the house, isn't there?
It can be this size. Once it gets over 15% of the square foot of the house, then you have to make it sort of blend in with the design and style of the house. But yes, it's within the size regulations. They can build it this large. But yeah, you're correct that once it gets over a certain size, it has to be, dressed up a little bit, I guess we would say. And, so from what they have shown, this has, some detailing. It's not just kind of a standard, Butler building. There's quite a few, enhancements on it.
Okay.
All right, any other questions from the board?
No, ma'am.
All over the public hearing? Yes, sir.
Good evening, ma'am, gentlemen.
Good
Before I say
evening.
anything, I'd like to thank Michelle publicly for helping me put this packet together. She did a phenomenal job. And I really appreciate the effort. The main reason why we're trying to put the building where we're doing is because of the topography. We live in a split level, so essentially, on that north side of the house, it starts going down right there at the house. So in order to build where you're indicating in back of it, it would require significant fill in there, probably out of my price range to fill that back there. And you can't see it in this photo necessarily, but in one of the others it shows to the east of the house is a Evergy easement. So we can't build anything between the house and New Lawrence Road very far, as you can see it right there.
Yeah, you can see the lines.
That's Evergy. And as it is now, the proposed building site goes right up to the easement, and we've had Evergy out there to look at it, and they're good with it, and all that stuff. As far as the neighbors go, we're all pretty thick out there. We all take care of each other. I'm the only one in the neighborhood's got a tractor, so I do all kinds of work for the neighbors, so they absolutely don't have any issue with the building. I've talked to all of them. And like we were talking about earlier, you can't see the house from the road, especially when the leaves are in. Subject to your questions.
Anybody have any questions? Questions?
No, I have no questions.
I don't have any questions either.
Thank you.
Good?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to speak in favor or in opposition? I'll close the public hearing. Any further discussion between the board?
I don't have any discussion.
Oh, man.
This is a hard one.
I agree.
It is unique, for sure.
Very unique.
All right. So I'm gonna go back to number one on this particular case in particular. It says the applicant must show that his property was acquired in good faith and where by reason of exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of this specific piece of property at the time of the effective date of the zoning ordinance, or whereby reason of exceptional topographical conditions or other extraordinary or exceptional circumstances, that the strict application of the terms of the development regulations of the city of Leavenworth, Kansas actually prohibits the use of his property in a manner similar to that of other property in the zoning district where it is located. Given that, a request for a variance may be granted upon a finding of the board that all of the following conditions have been met. The board shall make a determination on each condition, and the findings shall be entered into the record. First, that the variance requested arises from such condition which is unique to the property in question and is not ordinarily found in the same zone or district and is not created by an action or actions of the property owner or the applicant.
I agree.
I will tell you that I normally would disagree with this one, but because you do have exceptional topographic issues here, I'm going to agree.
I agree.
That the granting of the permit for the variance will not adversely affect the rights of the adjacent property owners or residents.
I agree.
I certainly agree, and nobody's going to be able to see it, probably.
I agree.
That the strict application of the provisions of the development regulations from which the variance is requested will constitute unnecessary hardship upon the property owner represented in the application.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
That the variance desired will not adversely affect the public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or general welfare.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
And lastly, that the granting of the variance desired will not be opposed to the general spirit and intent of the development regulations.
I agree.
Agree.
I agree.
And then In granting the variance, the board may impose such conditions, safeguards, and restrictions upon the premises benefited by the variance as may be necessary to reduce or minimize any potentially injurious effect of such variance upon other property in the neighborhood and to carry out the general purpose and intent of these development regulations.
The only thing I would say is that structure cannot intrude into the area that Evergy,
Yeah, but Evergy won't let that happen,
right, yeah. It won't.
be my guess. And the rendering that they submitted, they would have to meet that, or does it have to go back through a site plan review?
It'll go, when he applies for his building permit, that will come to our department for review.
Okay.
Okay.
You have anything?
I would say as long as everything stays in the parameters of what we've seen, I don't have an issue with it.
All right. Then the variance is approved. You're welcome. All right.
Thank you.
The third thing before us tonight is to hold a public hearing for case 2024-16 BZA located at 347 North 20th Terrace, wherein the petitioner is seeking a variance from section 6.08 of the adopted development regulations to allow a solid fence in excess of 6 feet in the rear yard of a residential property.
Okay, thank you. So again, this is a request to allow variance to allow a fence, a solid fence in excess of 6 feet in the rear yard. The applicants are proposing to construct a solid fence of up to 10 feet in height in order to increase privacy and noise reduction in their rear yard. The property is approximately 0.6 acres in size, and there's an existing single-family home. The applicant intends to add a height to a portion of the existing 6-foot solid fence in the rear yard to increase privacy from the property to the west. There is a significant difference in the grade between the subject property and the property to the west, with an approximately 4 to 6 foot difference in elevation at portions of the lots. The area where the fence is proposed to be constructed in excess of 6 feet is approximately 42 feet in length, extending from, let's zoom in a little bit, the rear portion of their driveway over to the side property line, so kind of that rear corner of the driveway coming back to the property line. Regulations do state that fences can be installed on rear property lines, but may not exceed 72 inches above the natural contour of the ground. So they've provided some pictures. So this is the existing fence that is back there, and you can kind of see the dashed yellow line where they would be looking at adding. Yeah, some more pictures. I think we got some more pictures. So this is, a view from their backyard into the neighbor's backyard, or part of their backyard from the neighbor's backyard. Just showing that the neighbor's backyard is higher, and so that they can see over the fence. And then this is illustrating the same thing. And then again, that is their fence there on the west side of the yard. That one's rotated. Sorry about that. And flip this one around. This is a view of the front of the house, showing kind of that grade difference there, how it slopes up to the neighbor to the west. Yeah, I believe that's the last picture. And so you can kind of see on Google Maps really how much they're at the end of a cul-de-sac and how much it really slopes all the way up to the end of the cul-de-sac. All of the properties are kind of dealing with a grade difference between each individual lot here. You can kind of see how they all slope down. Here's the house that we're talking about, and even their property neighbor to the other side is quite a bit lower than them. So this is Again, all the neighbors are dealing with the grade differences here, so. Again, after we sent out notifications to properties within 200 feet, staff did not receive any comments or questions from the properties that were notified. So I can answer any questions you might have, and the applicants are here as well.
I don't recall a case quite like this since I've been on the board. Have there been others?
I don't recall any either. There haven't been any in the 10 years that I've been here.
Okay.
Okay. Would it be possible on the map to show the topography lines in the proposed area?
I will say, I drove out there, and those pictures don't really portray it quite as severely as I think it is. Yeah,
Okay. Definitely see what you mean.
each one of those is 10 feet, is that right?
Each one is 2 feet.
2 feet.
Yeah. Sorry, it's gonna take a second to back up now that I tried to zoom out. So yeah, it slopes from the west to the east,
Yeah.
all the way down, and they're yeah, as they're bunched up more, it's a sharper slope, and so right through here where we're talking about the fence, there's a fair amount of slope. So this is 924, and then goes up to about 932 in that span.
Okay.
So have any other landowners or property owners in the past asked to increase the size or the height, rather, of their fence?
We haven't had any requests that have gone as far as requesting a variance. We don't have them documented. I'm sure they've asked over the years if they could. And, after we've talked through, kind of the regulations and the process, we haven't had any that have opted to request a variance.
Okay.
Okay.
And then when the packet was put together, did they note if neighbors were opposed to it or had any issues with this proposal?
Again, we have to send out notifications to everybody within 200 feet, so all of the neighbors would have been notified, and we didn't get any comments back
Okay.
after we sent that out.
So are there any strictures or additions if a fence or if an increase in height is allowed, then are there any additions that would have to be made to ensure the integrity of the fence?
They
So
would-
it doesn't topple
They would
over?
still need to get a fence permit.
Right.
We don't, inspect them for structural, issues, so that's, kind of on the property owner to ensure that.
Okay.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't believe, building codes even really address fence structural integrity.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a valid question, but I don't believe that our codes even really, address that.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Open the public hearing. Does anyone just speak in favor or in opposition?
Hello, evening, thanks for everybody's time. My name is Chris Redding, the owner, that's my wife Melanie. I think it's self-explanatory. I think if you look at the pictures we presented, you can, I think, kind of appreciate the difference. So I guess really, subject to your questions, it really is about privacy and noise reduction. Our neighbor to the west, they have dogs, and they're quite loud, so I think some of the fencing that we put up has helped in part, but obviously if you look at it, there's, that portion to the right with this particular photo, I mean, they can essentially see, and it really is just about the basic right to privacy, so I can see the pessimism in your eyes as you're trying to sort through, adherence to the rules, spirit of the law, letter of the law type thing, but I would pose the question to the board is, if you're gonna lean to the left and say no, I would ask you to tell me why I don't have the right to privacy, so. Subject to your questions.
Well, I appreciate that our ordinance doesn't anywhere say that you have a right to privacy, and that an offense doesn't necessarily ensure that, though I appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah, but if we had to redo it, our fence is pretty sturdy, we have a third stringer, to like actually reinforce the sides, so. We would probably do some additional cabling, but we don't do things on the cheap really, so it would be
Yeah,
a legitimate
don't
fence.
spend all the money to put up a fence that falls over.
So is noise abatement also a legitimate issue then?
From our perspective, yes. And I guess just to answer another question the board had before the public hearing opened. We did field some questions from the neighbors, they didn't call in. Most of them just wanted to make sure though that, because the language that gets written, it's more legalese. But our two neighbors to the west didn't have any issues with it. We had one neighbor who's on the corner, who's, I'll say 3 feet inside of the 200-foot limit. I had to go clarify them what it was because they were confused. They thought the fence was in relation to property that's not on our lot. It's actually on that big green chunk that nobody owns right there. Our neighbors up the hill own that lot, and so they thought that we were going to build something that was in their backyard. These it might actually be these people down here.
Yeah.
They just, based on the language in the letter, they thought that we were gonna build something right here, and that wasn't the case, so we cleared that up through a conversation at their door,
Okay.
but other than that, I haven't heard anything from my neighbors personally, even though nothing was mailed in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to speak in favor or in opposition? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Discussion? I think, for me, it's another difficult one because it's a bit of a slippery slope because we've not had any applications for this list, not since I've been here. And so we have to be careful about what we approve because it will, or not approve, because it can certainly open a can of worms.
I do agree with that. Just looking at the topography. Yeah.
Yes. There are significant topographical issues there for sure.
Yes. My question is, how much city has weird slopes like this to potentially open up the
Which
floodgates?
you speak up, otherwise it won't pick up for the
Okay.
recording, yeah.
Okay, so we're just wondering, how much of the city's on a slope like this that could potentially open up the floodgates for a bunch of variances for this? That makes sense. I'm not entirely sure.
Do you have any leeway in terms of staff of approving, like, I know you can about some things, you're allowed a 10% overage or whatever. Does that relate to fences at all?
Yep, so we can approve up to a 10% administrative variance, so for, a 6-foot privacy fence, that's not really gonna get them, very far where they wanna be. But yes, you're correct, we can approve up to 10% administratively on things like this.
So the additional amount requested is 4 feet, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, they're requesting build up to a 10-foot high fence. And when we review a fence application, we have to, you know, it has to be measured from the ground level of their property line, you know, the average grade of their property line, not a neighboring, you know, into a neighbor's property. So that's how we have to review it when we're taking a look at them.
Okay.
So 9 would be 10, 67.
So yeah, 10% administrative variance would be about 7 inches.
Right,
Mhm.
it's not much.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think that would achieve the desired effect.
It would not.
Y'all ready to vote?
I'm ready.
Or do you?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So again, the applicant must show that his property was acquired in good faith and where by reason of exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of his specific piece of property at the time of the effective date of the zoning ordinance, or where by reason of exceptional topographical conditions or other extraordinary or exceptional circumstances, that the strict application of the terms of the development regulations of the city of Kansas, Leavenworth, Kansas, actually prohibits the use of his property in the manner similar to that of other property in the zoning district where it is located. A request for a variance may be granted upon a finding of the board that all of the following conditions have been met. The board shall make a determination on each condition, and the finding shall be entered into the record. First, that the variance requested arises from such condition that is unique to the property in question and is not ordinarily found in the same zone or district and is not created by an action or actions of the property owner or the applicant.
I agree.
I'm struggling. You know, it's in your backyard, and I want to say, yes, it's fine, but part of me is like, and then you do have the exceptional topographical circumstances, of course. Is it unique to the property? Depends on how you interpret that. You know, it's certainly not unique to your property in that particular neighborhood. Is it unique to the other property in Leavenworth? Perhaps. I agree.
I agree. Hey, if I may
Yes.
add too, even if let's say if we were to move through and this variance was approved, we can also decide or determine what the increase
Yes.
that we will allow, or we would allow.
Yes, we can add conditions.
I just wanted to add that.
Yeah. Secondly, that the granting of the permit for the variance will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners or residents. Commissioner Horvath?
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
That the strict application of the provisions of the development regulations from which the variance requested will constitute unnecessary hardship upon the property owner represented in the application.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree. Got some noisy dogs next to me.
That the variance desired would not adversely affect the public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or general welfare.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
That granting of the variance desired will not be opposed to the general spirit and intent of the development regulations.
I agree.
I agree.
Agree.
In granting a variance, the board may impose such conditions, safeguards, and restrictions upon the premises benefited by the variance as may be necessary to reduce or minimize any potential injurious effect of such variance upon other property in the neighborhood and to carry out the general purpose and intent of these development regulations. So here we can have a little discussion.
I just believe that 4 feet, an additional 4 feet, is excessive. And plus we get a lot of wind here, and maybe I'm incorrect, but but my house is on a ridge line also. My neighbors have noisy dogs. Now, I have some noisy dogs too as a result of that, probably, but I couldn't imagine putting another 4 feet on there, just how we'd have to do it, but I think we always have to keep in mind that it has to be structurally sound, whatever it is.
I agree.
And I think staff would make sure that it is structurally sound through the permitting process, but I tend to agree with you, 4 feet, a 10-foot fence seems excessive.
I will just note, just kind of for what it's worth, the tallest fence height allowed in the regulations is 8 feet for industrial districts. So that's the tallest fence any property in town
Regardless.
is allowed to have is 8 feet tall.
Okay.
I would entertain a motion perhaps to put a
For 8
condition
feet, yeah.
to limit it to 8 feet,
I was thinking the same thing. I would agree to something like that.
okay?
I agree.
All right,
Then I make a motion that we put a limitation on the addition, the height addition to this particular fence of 2 feet for a total of 8 feet.
okay. We'll second that.
I second that.
All in favor?
I agree.
All right,
Aye.
so the variance is approved. Any other conditions you guys want to talk about before I say that? Anything else? Sorry,
No.
got ahead of myself.
That's doing fine, man.
No.
All right, so the variance is approved, but with a limit of 8 feet rather than 10.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, we have no other business.
Okay, we do not have any agenda items for July.
Okay.
We will potentially have one for August, but we will keep you updated. We have not hit the deadline for that yet.
Okay.
And we should hopefully have Mr. Bates reappointed by that time, so we should hopefully be back in business with a full board.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right,
All right.
motion to adjourn? Or I'll just adjourn.